Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for NIPSCO's electric rate case, What You Need to Know. We are really thankful to everyone who is here both on Zoom and Facebook Live. Let me share my screen really quick, and then we will dive on in with the webinar. Okay, everyone seeing that all right? Great. Awesome. Thanks again so much for being here. We're very happy to have you. My name is Kelly Hamman, and I am Citizens Action Coalition's Phone Canvas Director. And I am having trouble navigating to the next slide. There we go. Tonight, I am joined by Ben Inskeep, CAC's Program Director, Kerwin Olson, our Executive Director, and Samir Doshi, Senior Attorney at Earthjustice. CAC really appreciates all the help we get from Earthjustice and Samir, but especially now that our attorney just welcomed a new baby girl into the world. So thank you so much. And again, thank you everyone for being here tonight. A little bit about Citizens Action Coalition in case this is the first time you're meeting us this evening. We are Indiana's oldest and largest consumer and environmental advocacy organization. We were founded back in 1974 in response to the energy crisis. At that point, a coalition of churches, labor unions, senior groups felt that the little guy needed a voice and an advocate when it came to energy issues. And we've really remained steadfast in our commitment to that goal for the past 48 years. Since our inception back in the 70s, we have saved Hoosiers over $10 billion in excess utility charges, and we do fight to grow that number every chance that we get. We, of course, advocate on behalf of Hoosiers on a variety of issues. Of course, energy policy and utility reform are our bread and butter, but we do also engage with healthcare, pollution prevention, and family farms. Okay, now I will let Samir share a little bit about the great work at Earthjustice.
Thank you, Kelly. Earthjustice was founded 50 years ago. Originally, it was known as Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. Over time, it branched out to represent a number of clients all around the country and changed its name to Earthjustice in the 1990s. Today, Earthjustice is in 15 cities around the country, including areas with the greatest vulnerability to environmental degradation, including 2 cities in Alaska, Hawaii, the Gulf of Mexico, and Chicago. I'm in suburban Chicago. Earthjustice has worked with CAC for the last decade in a number of energy regulatory cases at the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission, including the most recent NIPSCO electric rate case back in 2018 and 19, which, if you're keeping score, you don't have to, was cause number 45159 at the commission.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Samir. And a quick overview of how the webinar will go tonight. We're going to kick it off with a quick discussion of the ongoing utility affordability crisis here in Indiana. I know that is at the forefront of Citizens Action Coalition's mind as it affects not only folks in NIPSCO service territory, but people all across the state. And then we will definitely dive in and share everything you need to know about NIPSCO's rate case. We'll give you a quick overview and what NIPSCO is proposing throughout this proceeding. We'll pivot to share a little bit about what CAC will advocate for throughout the rate case. We'll walk you through the procedural schedule so you get a sense of the process. And we will finally wrap up the presentation part of the webinar by talking about the public hearings and ways to get involved. After we finish presenting, we will have a question and answer session. So if you are joining us on Zoom, you will see a Q&A box. Feel free to type those questions as they come up throughout the presentations. If you're tuning in on Facebook, type your questions into the comments on the video stream. I will say we're not ignoring you. If we don't answer your questions right away, we're just going to hold off on diving into those until we wrap up with presentations. And before I kick it to Kerwin to talk a little bit about the utility affordability crisis, do want to mention that we will make both a recording of this webinar and the presentation slides available to you both on our website and in a follow-up email from Zoom. So thank you so much, and I'll kick it to Kerwin.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly, and thanks everybody for joining us today. And on that note, I would point out that we did do a separate webinar on the utility affordability crisis, which is archived on our website as well for viewing if you'd like to check that out as well. But just quickly, this is not what we're here to talk about tonight, but this rate case certainly, depending on the outcome, will exacerbate this crisis. We all are well aware of the inflationary pressures that consumers are feeling today, and a lot of that centers around energy and utility bills. Generally, people are struggling to get by and making hard choices every single day. And we've got a nice graph put together here that shows the escalation in the average residential electric bill in the state of Indiana from the year 2000 up until the year 2022. Bills more than doubling in real dollars over the last 20 years. And with NIPSCO alone, you can see the numbers there on the slide, but 32% increase in the average monthly bill since 2013 and 72% since 2003. In this case, of course, depending on the outcome, will exacerbate that crisis. And just quickly, you'll notice a large uptick in the escalation of the average bill beginning in the mid-2000s, which is really when the state of Indiana really made a decision to double down on coal, double down on fossil fuels, invest a ton of money in infrastructure related to coal generation. And with knowing that and understanding this recent electricity crisis is in large part fueled by the escalation in energy costs, both for fossil gas and coal, then Indiana is positioned disproportionately impacted by increases in fuel costs, as most of our electric generation is coming from fossil fuels. So it's a disproportionate impact in the state of Indiana that faces Indiana customers today. And with that, I will turn it over to Samir to continue the discussion on the rate case.
Thank you, Kerwin. So an electric utility in a regulated state like Indiana, like gas utilities, has the option anytime it wishes to file a case at the State Regulatory Commission asking for an increase in its annual revenue. I believe NIPSCO's current electric revenues are somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion. I could be off by a small amount, but somewhere in that neighborhood. And as we'll discuss in coming slides, they've asked for a big increase in annual revenue. Their most recent case, electric rate case, as I said before, was back in 2018, and the commission finally issued an order back in 2019. So in September of this year, almost 3 years later, NIPSCO decided to file again for an increase in their annual revenue. Now, there are other pending cases at the Indiana Commission that also have the potential to increase customer rates. Those include one case with the docket number 45700, which relates to the cost of coal ash cleanup at NIPSCO's Michigan City power plant. That's ongoing, and CAC is involved in that one. Another case is called the Fuel Adjustment Clause case, which NIPSCO, like most electric utilities in the state, files every quarter to request recovery of whatever they paid for fuel and other operating costs to run their power plant. The most recent Fuel Adjustment Clause case that NIPSCO filed at the commission, if you're interested, the docket number is 38706 FAC 137. I know it's super boring, but very important. NIPSCO, through that Fuel Adjustment Clause case, separate from this rate case, has asked for an increase in their fuel costs that would raise customer charges by approximately $6 per month. Additionally, through the rate case that we're talking about today, the commission is going to decide not just what the company's total annual revenue will be, but also how that revenue and the rate that the company charges to recover that revenue get sliced up and allocated among different types of customers. That includes residential customers, small commercial customers, large industrial customers, as well as within each customer class, how the rates are structured. You may have seen on your electric bill, there's a fixed monthly charge as well as a per kilowatt hour charge. As we'll talk about in coming slides, NIPSCO is asking to increase the fixed monthly charge on your bill by $3.50, with some level of decrease in the per kilowatt hour charge. In addition, through this rate case, the commission will decide to some degree what programs the company should or will offer to its consumers. That includes demand response. That includes, as I believe Kerwin will discuss, a proposed low-income support program that NIPSCO is introducing or proposing to introduce for the first time for its electric customers. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So we've made some pie charts to try to make these complicated ideas a little simpler. As I said, the company has asked for a large increase in their annual revenue requirement. Right now, their annual revenue, as set in that previous rate case back in 2019, is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion, or $1,500 million, said another way. The company is asking for an increase in annual revenue of almost $400 million, which comes to about 25% of their current annual revenue. Additionally, as I said before, a separate decision or a set of decisions the commission will make in this case is how that revenue should be split up and allocated among different types of customers. And CAC is going to fight to make sure that residential customers are charged a fair share, but not more than a fair share, and other customer classes, including commercial customers and large industrial customers, are charged their fair share and not less. That's what we're alluding to with the bottom set of pie charts.
Great. Let me walk through a few of these key proposals in more detail. So as Samir was saying, the big headline for this case is this large revenue requirement increase by the utility of nearly $400 million each year. So what are the components that are going into it? Well, probably one of the most troubling aspects of this revenue requirement increase is related to the fact that NIPSCO is asking for a higher profit margin in their rates. They're seeking an increase in the return on equity from 9.75% to 10.4%. Now, these small percentage points might sound small and insignificant, but when you are talking about multiplying that by very big investments the utility makes, it actually has an impact that's tens of millions of dollars in terms of how much the utility can collect from customers. So that impact is significant. The utility is also seeking to recover costs that it has already spent related to its transmission and distribution system upgrades, over $700 million related to those. Yet it's worth noting that NIPSCO's reliability has actually decreased in the last few years. So that aspect is troubling, that they're spending a lot on their grid, yet reliability does not seem to be improving. A couple of the other aspects of this case relate to large investments the utility has made in solar and wind. That's kind of part of the utility's energy transition that the Citizens Action Coalition has generally supported. But unfortunately, one aspect or one change in that plan occurred earlier this year when NIPSCO announced that it was going to delay retiring two of its coal units at the Schaefer coal-fired generation plant that the utility had been planning to retire in 2023, but it is now planning to retire in 2025. So that means some of those costs of operating that coal plant are still going to continue to be in rates when previously NIPSCO had been expecting to close the closed those coal units and those costs would have gone away. This revenue requirement increase is not happening all at once, but rather over 3 different phases. So as NIPSCO has proposed, the rate increase would hit customers at 3 different times. First, beginning in September of 2023. The next rate increase would hit customers in March of 2024. And then the final step of the rate increase would hit in July of 2024. All told, after all those rate increases are implemented in stages, the average residential customer bill would go up by about $20 a month. It's important to note that is an average bill for an average customer in an average month. So your bill could go up far more than that if you're using more energy than the average customer, or if it's in a particular month that you're using a lot more electricity, such as summer months when you might have a very high cooling electricity demand for your air conditioning. Next slide, please. Let's walk through a few more of these proposals. Another aspect of this case is that NIPSCO is taking out some of those coal costs of operating its coal plants and proposing to put it into a new tracker or rider mechanism. So this mechanism, NIPSCO says, would allow them to reflect cost reductions when they retire a coal plant more quickly to customers. So we're evaluating that proposal to make sure that it is beneficial to customers. Another aspect of this case relates to a sweetheart deal that NIPSCO struck with its very big industrial customers in its last rate case. That deal that they struck with industrial customers essentially lets them pay less and less into the system, and meaning more and more costs fall on residential and commercial customers. They proposed to continue this deal in this case and further reduce the amount of costs that are going to fall on these big industrial customers. So that's a proposal that we are very troubled by, given that it means that the residential ratepayers, families, are going to be bearing more of the burden of the costs of these plants. Another aspect of this case is that NIPSCO is proposing a new EV charging tariff or rate for some new fast EV charging stations that NIPSCO is deploying in their service area. NIPSCO did get some grant money to implement some of these charging stations that can charge electric vehicles very quickly. However, one of the proposals related to this EV charging rate is quite a high charging rate for customers that are charging their electric cars. 40 cents a kilowatt hour is roughly what they're proposing. And so that rate is much higher than what residential customers are going to be paying. So we're evaluating that proposal as well to make sure that it's fair to customers. I will note that even at that very high rate, it is still cheaper than filling your typical car gas tank with gasoline. So there's still benefits from a cost perspective for electric vehicles under this rate, but we'll continue to make sure that this rate is as fair as possible to customers. Next slide, please. So what is this going to look like in terms of your actual rates that are going into your bill you pay every month? So as Samir was suggesting earlier, there are 2 main components to a residential electric bill in NIPSCO's territory. One is your variable charge. In other words, the charge you pay per unit of electricity you use every month. And then the other component is your fixed charge that you pay regardless of how much electricity you use. It's just to be a NIPSCO customer, you have to pay that regardless. In this case, if NIPSCO's proposals are approved, NIPSCO's variable charge rate would increase from about 16 cents a kilowatt hour today to over 18 cents a kilowatt hour by the time the rate increase is fully implemented in July of 2024. It's important to note that it is possible that in July of 2024, we could see customers having even higher rates as a result of various tracker mechanisms that NIPSCO has already received approval for and that are already in rates that are outside of this rate case. So as Samir was discussing earlier, one example of that is coal ash costs that NIPSCO is trying to seek recovery for in a tracker mechanism. So if those coal ash costs are approved, that would be in addition to this rate increase in this case. And then the other component is that fixed charge. Currently, it's $13.50 a month for residential customers, and NIPSCO wants to increase that to $17 a month. We're concerned by high fixed charges because it does decrease the incentive for energy efficiency. It makes it harder for customers that are low usage customers to have an affordable bill. And we generally think the methodology used by NIPSCO to calculate this, it has some flaws to it. So CAC has advocated for lower fixed charges. Next slide, please, Kelly. Thanks. And then the last key proposal I'll touch on today, and happy to discuss other ones as well if folks have questions about other elements, is the new low-income program or universal service program that NIPSCO is proposing to offer, which is similar to the universal service program it currently offers to its gas customers. So this isn't a new concept. It's a concept that has been around for more than a decade now in NIPSCO's gas service territory. And now they're applying it to electric customers under this proposal. It would be available to customers who are LIHEAP eligible. LIHEAP is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. And what it would do is it would give these folks a bill discount during their summer billing months, when typically customers have much higher electricity bills due to heat, and so they're cooling their houses with air conditioning or fans. So this bill discount would help customers in months that are typically pretty high bills for customers. The discount would range from about $12 to about $22 per month. And a couple other elements of some of the proposals here include capping deposits for customers at $50 a month. So making sure that it's more affordable than it currently is for customers who could have a deposit that's much higher than that, in the hundreds of dollars, potentially even more. NIPSCO does continue to offer 6-month payment plans, or even 12 months for customers who are LIHEAP eligible. So if you or folks you know are struggling to pay your bill in a month, NIPSCO does offer some options that can stretch out those payments to make it a little easier to catch up. Then one aspect that we potentially like to see some improvements to is when NIPSCO is proposing to actually implement this program. They don't want to implement it until summer of 2024. And we'd, of course, like to see it happen much sooner. Customers are already facing this affordability crisis that Kerwin discussed earlier. And so we think relief is needed much sooner for customers. And of course, we would like to see even higher benefits to these folks. NIPSCO is proposing a $20 a month or so bill increase for customers, and this discount program would only offer a discount of $12 to $22 for summer months. So not even enough to fully offset the potential impact of this rate case. This program would be funded by collecting 40 cents per month from each NIPSCO customer. And then NIPSCO would also chip in $200,000 each year to help fund this program. That $200,000 would be funded by their shareholders, and it would not be funded by ratepayers. And I think that wraps it up for the Universal Service Program. So let me turn it over to, I believe Kerwin is next.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ben and Samir. Yeah, just wanted to touch on, our work in the review of the case. Let folks know that we're absolutely working to fight for NIPSCO customers in this case. We're very involved in the case and currently working to hire some outside experts to file expert testimony on a specific subject matter that they are credible in to provide that testimony. So some of our key priorities, understanding that we're still reviewing the case. Rate cases take a really long time. You're looking under the hood of the car, if you will, of the utility company. So there's hundreds and hundreds of pages of testimony, and I don't even venture a guess as to how many pages of Excel worksheets, workbooks, financial documents, and other that really take a lot of time to do a deep dive in, do some forensic accounting in, and of course the back and forth of all the discovery that's going on in the case between all the intervening parties, as well as the utility company itself. So these are our priorities and things that we intend to do a deeper dive on. We, of course, are absolutely very, very supportive of the NIPSCO Universal Service Program, despite its shortcomings. We sincerely appreciate NIPSCO offering seeking approval of this program because CAC has been working almost 50 years now to get low income assistance program for electric utility ratepayers on an ongoing basis, and we've pretty much hit a brick wall. So kudos to NIPSCO for stepping out in front and offering, filing for approval of a universal service programs, despite the inadequacies of the proposal. We'll recommend some changes and adjustments to the programs and things we'd like to see. But I think the goal here is to make sure that the commission approves this program, because there's been some resistance to approving low income programs before the commission. So we're going to offer NIPSCO the support that they need, that we hope anyway, to get this program done. This is the case, of course, that is all about NIPSCO's clean energy transition towards moving away from coal-fired power to renewable energy. So there's lots of renewable energy projects in here, solar and wind projects. That stuff costs money. So it's a fine line. We of course are absolutely strongly supportive of NIPSCO's transition to clean energy. And again, NIPSCO took the lead on that in Indiana. So kudos to NIPSCO for stepping out, saying we're going coal-free by 2028 and going all in on wind, storage, and solar. Good for them. That stuff costs money. And so we want to express our support of NIPSCO's transition to renewable energy, with keeping a keen eye on making sure that these costs, again, are fair to customers. And we do that in the most cost-effective, fair, and equitable manner possible towards customers. We are certainly going to look at that massive revenue requirement they're seeking, with a keen eye on the higher ROE that Ben discussed, the higher profit that's built in. We personally find it a little bit surprising, if not shameful, that in the midst of this affordability crisis, in the midst of all of these rate increases going on, that NIPSCO felt compelled to seek an increase in their profit margin before the regulatory commission in this rate case. So we'll be taking a look at that and making comments on that proposal, because there's an example of something that can be done to reduce the impact of this rate impact, is a little more fair allocation between customers and shareholders. We're certainly going to again look at, as we characterize it, that sweetheart deal, if you will, between NIPSCO and their large industrial customers up there. We have no issue with large industrial customers generating their own energy, and hopefully most of that's coming from clean energy and doing their thing. However, what we object to is when costs are shifted, that we believe industrial customers are responsible for causing some of those costs, and therefore should bear the burden of paying some of those costs. So we want to make sure that there's not what we deem as unfair cost shifts from the large users down to residential customers, small businesses, and the like. So we'll be taking a look at that proposal in this rate case. And then, of course, on the bottom, we're always going to fight hard against increases in fixed charges, as we've already alluded to. Fixed, increases in fixed costs. That's what you got to pay before you use any energy whatsoever. Increases in fixed costs, disproportionately impact low-income households, fixed income households, many of which are senior citizens making tough decisions every day between healthcare, rent, food, and other necessities of life. And reduces customers' ability to control their energy costs when they collect more on the front end rather than base that on volumetric usage. So increasing residential fixed charge is bad for low-income customers, bad for customers in general. It's counterintuitive to the idea of conservation and energy efficiency and reducing and controlling your energy costs. And also, it's unfair and disproportionately impacts customers who self-generate their own energy, especially with rooftop solar on their properties. So we'll be opposing that increase in that residential fixed charge for those very reasons. And then lastly, this is a sort of a new issue for CAC, but we're going to do a deep dive on this issue in this rate case, and that's looking to a separate, perhaps proposing a separate rate class, or at least looking at the idea of a separate rate class for customers living in multifamily housing. Why is that? Because the cost to serve customers in multifamily housing is much lower than the cost to serve large commercial customers, single-family households, subdivisions in the suburbs, rural customers. Those customers are much higher to serve, a much higher cost to serve, versus a multifamily home where you can serve 100, 150 meters with one circuit versus 10 or 12 in the suburbs. So we'll be taking a look at that and possibly suggesting bringing some fairness to that rate allocation. If we're going to set rates as we do in Indiana based on cost to serve, if you will, then let's do that. Let's be fair about it. And let's allocate those costs and take a look at those living in multifamily housing with respect to how much does it really cost the utility to serve that customer versus how much does it cost, for example, to serve the McMansion in the gated community out in the suburb. There's a disparity there in that cost to serve. So what we're looking for at CAC is moving towards rate design for utility bills that is based on the premise of equity and fairness for all. And so we're going to start looking at this in this NIPSCO case. Will sort of be the first one for us where we're going to do that deep dive. Don't know where we're going to land on that in the end because we've got to get experts hired. Got to start analyzing their cost of service studies and all of that complicated, wonky stuff. But we're going to do our best and do a deep dive and hopefully make some good things happen on that front in this case. And those are our top priorities in this case at the moment, understanding that it's still under review. Got a long way to go in terms of digesting this case. And frequently when we bring experts on board to take a look at things, they notice things that we don't see, that we didn't notice. And, we may pivot on some of these things or even come up with another issue that we didn't at first anticipate we would be speaking to, but they might uncover for us because we've got, not quite 2 months, but a little while yet to go before we file testimony. And again, as Samir pointed out, that's in late January. But just want to let folks know that we're working hard on the case. We're engaging the folks we need to guide us in this case. And again, a huge shout out and thanks to Samir and the entire team at Earthjustice for providing their services in this case and so many other cases for CAC in the past as well. And with that, Kelly, I will turn it back over to you. Or I think I'm supposed to send it to Samir. I'm sorry. Samir, it is your turn again. Apologies. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Kerwin. So a regulatory case at the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission typically follows a certain rhythm and routine. Initially, the company files a petition, which is a fancy word for the paper they file that summarizes their request to the commission. That petition outlines the legal basis for their request and a summary of their argument and their story. And they accompany the petition with pre-written testimony from their witnesses. Unlike what you can imagine from court scenes on TV, pre-written testimony is just as it sounds. It's written, it's not live and in person. The witnesses get to tell their story exactly the way they want to tell it. And the witnesses for the company are a mix of in-house employees, accountants, economists, engineers, as well as outside hired consultants. So back in September, NIPSCO filed their petition and accompanying testimony, and intervening parties, including CAC, along with the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, have the opportunity, as Kerwin said, to file our testimony, presenting our best arguments, the information we think the commission should consider in making a decision. And the filing date for that is January 20th. So right now we're working on discussing things with potential expert witnesses we might engage and making a plan, as Kerwin said, for what technical issues they should look at in developing testimony. In March, there's going to be an evidentiary hearing in Indianapolis at the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission. It could and likely will go multiple days. On the slide, you can see that they've reserved, that looks like 10 business days for the evidentiary hearing. It may not go 10 business days. It might, but it probably won't, but it will likely be a multi-day affair. Evidentiary hearing in utility regulatory world is a fancy word for a trial, except the lawyerly examination you may have seen on TV and depictions of courtroom scenes in a utility case is largely only cross-examination, where lawyers ask questions of opposing witnesses. So we may take the opportunity at the March evidentiary hearing to put NIPSCO's witnesses on trial and try to pin them down, find the weaknesses in their story, get them to admit things they don't want to admit. We'll be planning for that as these weeks and months go on. And by law, the commission is required to issue a decision on NIPSCO's request by next August, which is 11 months after they filed their initial request in September of this year. And any rate increase that the commission might approve would go into effect on bills beginning in September of next year. Now, the commission is not restricted to just saying yes or no on NIPSCO's request of an almost $400 million annual revenue increase. In most regulatory cases like this, the ultimate decision is something that's a little different, a little less, we would hope. I don't think I've ever seen a final decision that's more than the utility requested. We might see a decision where the increase granted is less than the utility requested, and that's certainly what we're aiming for. Now, at the top of the slide, you can see two events coming up called public hearings. Now, these are not evidentiary hearings. Expert witnesses are not going to be there, but it's an opportunity for members of the public to come and express their opinions and concerns about NIPSCO's request. The first such public hearing is next Monday, the 12th, at 7 Eastern Time, 6 Central in Hammond. I'm planning to be there. And the next one is in January, just after the new year. So certainly if you're within shouting distance of Hammond, please let us know if you're interested in coming. We'll provide the specific information of where it's located. I think the location might also be on NIPSCO's website, but we can provide the information. I should also mention the evidentiary hearing in March in Indianapolis will likely be streamed by the commission via a YouTube or Zoom-based platform. So if you're interested, you can tune in live to watch us try to grill the opposing witnesses. Next slide.
And I'll just chime in as Kelly changes the slide that some of the more details on those public hearings are also available on CAC's website if you want to know the specific building and where it's located.
Yes, thank you. And I will dive in and talk about public hearings and ways you can engage here in just a minute, but I wanted to make a quick plug that in a couple slides, we will wrap up with the presentations and we'll pivot to the question and answer session. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box if you're on Zoom. If you're watching us on Facebook, feel free to type those questions into the comments below the video stream. And as Samir was mentioning, these public hearings are really, really important. They are a very rare opportunity for utility customers to speak directly to utility commissioners. So we really want folks to take full advantage of this opportunity since it doesn't happen very often. At these public hearings, it is so important that you show up to share your story. As you can tell throughout this webinar, there are a lot of factors to consider throughout the entire rate case process. And we really want to make sure that the human impact of this potential rate increase is not lost. So showing up to share how this increase would impact you and your family and your community is absolutely critical. You can totally prepare notes ahead of time or read from a pre-written statement. If you'd like to wing it and speak from the heart in the moment, that works fine too. It is really important to note that even if you have all the feels about this potential rate increase, you do want to make sure you're polite, concise, and stick to your key points, both about how this will impact you and your community, as well as the facts of the case that you think are important. We do know that public speaking is not everyone's cup of tea, so don't fret if that is the case. Showing up to be a body in the room for the field hearings is really important as well. A big turnout definitely shows that this case matters to customers. If you are planning to attend and speak, know that this is a formal proceeding, so you will be sworn in and asked to give your name and spell it when you first walk up to speak. When you start to talk about how you feel about the rate case, make sure to reference how it would impact you, your family, your community. You can integrate specific aspects of the case, like their proposed increase in the fixed charge or their profits. And you can also point out the good things NIPSCO is doing, both broadly and with this case. You know, as Kerwin said, Citizens Action Coalition applauds the Universal Service Program, NIPSCO for offering that, even though we've got some reservations about some things. And we're also grateful that they are investing in renewable energy. So feel free to reference those when you speak as well. It is important to know that public hearings are not the only opportunity to make your voice heard. The Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, a state agency, they are accepting written comment in this case. So if you reach out to them, be sure to reference cause number 45772 in your comments. That does help to connect your comments with NIPSCO's electric rate case. We'll also mention that here at Citizens Action Coalition, we understand life is busy. We also know rate cases are fairly complex. So we made it real easy for you to reach out to the OUCC from our website. You can send an email to that agency to make your voice heard about this case. A quick little recap on these action steps. Again, the opportunity to speak directly to utility commissioners does not come very often. So if you show up to those public field hearings to tell your story, that makes a big difference. Do want to mention that commissioners are not there to answer questions throughout the field hearings. They're just there to listen. Again, you can also submit written comments to the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor. It's very easy to do that from our website. Want to point out that letting your friends, family, neighbors know about this rate increase also helps us out a bunch. Standing up for the community's needs in the face of NIPSCO's proposed rate increase, it takes all voices, right? But the more the merrier is absolutely true when it comes to public participation in this case. Now is definitely a time for organizing and mobilizing. So sharing not only that this rate increase is being proposed, but also what folks can do about it across all channels is essential. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Nextdoor, sharing information about the upcoming field hearings and how to make your voice heard helps a bunch. If email's more your speed, our webpage has a lot of great info on this rate increase. And of course, picking up the phone, call your friends and family or send a couple of texts, but all of us chipping in to help more folks know about this case and get engaged. That's going to make a big difference in getting a lot of folks to make their voice heard. And last, but certainly not least, it is also critical to contact your state senators and state representatives about why affordable utility bills matter to you. We really need laws here in Indiana that are going to help make bills more affordable for folks. Lawmakers definitely need to hear from you so that they clearly understand that fair and affordable utility rates is essential to you. Okay, and that wraps up the presentation aspect of our webinar. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and we will dive into question and answers. But first, I'm going to give it back to Kerwin.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. Yeah, no, I told Kelly I had something to add because there's one aspect of the case that we've omitted, and that is all of the different intervening parties in the case. In these rate cases, there's lots of intervention from lots of interested stakeholders. In the case of NIPSCO, they are one of the most, if not the most, industrial intensive utilities in the entire country in terms of the amount of industrial load in their service territory is extraordinary. So we have quite a few of intervening parties in this case that I thought worth mentioning. The intervening parties in this case, or the stakeholders in this case, would be U.S. Steel, NLMK Steel, the industrial group generically, the NIPSCO industrial customers, which at the moment includes 8 large industrial users like Cleveland Cliffs and Cargill and BP and Marathon and U.S. Gypsum and a few others. The other intervening parties that we have in the case is ChargePoint. They're an electric charging company, obviously with a keen interest in those electric charging rates being proposed. Walmart is a regular intervening at the American Regulatory Commission, and they have intervened in this case as well to work to protect their interest as well as the interest of sort of commercial customers in general, who are also concerned about cost shifts from industrial customers. Then we have a group that frequently intervenes in NIPSCO cases known as IMUG, or the Indiana Municipal Utility Group, which is a collection of small cities, municipalities up in the NIPSCO service territory. I'm not sure who the exact members of IMUG are in this case, but they are a participant in this case. As well as today, interestingly enough, there was a group that I had never seen that intervened in this case, and that was the RV users or RV group or some collection of RV, I think it must be manufacturers. I'm really not entirely sure. So I'm going to review that, but I found that interesting that we have this new RV group that has intervened. So in addition to, of course, CAC, as we've talked about, and the Office of Utility Consumer Counselor, we have all of these other intervening parties in the case who are also conducting discovery, who will also be filing testimony, and who will also have the ability to respond to testimony from other parties. So there's a lot of special interest in this case. There's a lot of stakeholders in this case who are representing a variety of interests, whether it's residential customers, low-income customers, electric charging rates, industrial users, small cities, municipalities, Walmart, and the like. So lots of stakeholders get engaged in these cases, and so there's lots of interest, and these things take a while. So I just thought I would mention all of the different intervening parties and stakeholders that are in this case. And with that, I'll turn it back to you there, Kelly.
Thank you so much. I am seeing a question here. Can we touch again? And I think, Samir, you mentioned this in your presentation, but someone's asking about all the recent rate hike requests from NIPSCO. So if we could rattle those off again to let folks know this big rate increase is one of many other proposed increases at the commission right now.
Oh, you're on mute, Samir.
Sorry, I thought I unmuted. I'm sorry. There's a pending fuel adjustment clause quarterly filing that NIPSCO filed last month. They do these every 3 months. But the most recent one was a doozy as far as rates. It represents, if approved and implemented within a few months, an increase of $6 per month on the average residential customer bill compared to the fuel adjustment clause charge that's presently in effect. So that's pending and brewing. Then there's NIPSCO's pending case at the Indiana Commission to recover costs of coal ash cleanup at 5 separate coal ash disposal units at its Michigan City power plant. CAC is involved in that one and has filed testimony. I have a colleague who's been assisting CAC with that one. That's cause 45700 at the commission. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe the long-term revenue implication of that Michigan City coal ash cleanup case is quite a lot less than this general electric rate case. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, I believe that one's about 40 cents. And then there's a new coal ash case that's also in the neighborhood of, I think, 40 to 50 cents also. So 2 pending coal ash cases that could add a little bit less than $1 to customer bills. That's separate from these fuel adjustment clause trackers. That's separate from this rate case.
Yeah, and I would add to this to Susan's question that it can be complicated to follow all of the cases at the commission because there are many filings every single week. It really is extraordinary how many cases there are, and that's why at CAC we prefer to follow increases in bills versus all of the various cases that are being filed, because there's a whole host of tracker proceedings, if you will, whether it's the fuel adjustment clauses or trackers related to their T-to-SIC things. Trackers do go up, trackers do go down over the course of a year. Utilities like NIPSCO do have on their website their historical trackers, so you can see how those things sort of ebb and flow. So can certainly get you something on that, Susan, but at the same time, that's why we prefer to follow the trends and sort of what people are paying in total on a monthly bill, rather than trying to track every single case and what the outcome is, what the outcome was in that case. We like to look at bill from a bill perspective on how much have bills increased over a period of time and what people are actually paying. Because the reality is customers, I know the utilities don't like when I say this, but customers pay bills, not rates. So it's the bill that comes in your, well, I was going to say mailbox, but it's 2022. So the bill you receive every month that you pay, that's that total dollar figure is more meaningful in terms of tracking on affordability trends and other things than necessarily rates. So.
Kerwin, I still like getting a paper bill.
Yeah, we still get one. We're an RMC member, but we still get one, in the mail.
Kerwin, I did want to talk a little bit more about the low income program, because you mentioned NIPSCO already offers one for their gas customers, and thanks to a state law passed a couple years ago, a few water utilities have started to offer low income programs as well, but not electric. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit more to the fact that it's great that NIPSCO is moving forward with this, and any other context you think folks need to know.
Well, I think the first context is that we strive at CAC to work for the idea of basic utility service as a right, and that all Hoosiers, regardless of means, income, zip code, should, without question, have uninterrupted access to essential human services. We're talking about these essential services that are necessary for folks to participate in life on a daily basis. So, it's about quality of life, health, and safety for folks. And so, we're thrilled that NIPSCO has proposed this. It's small, it's a little inadequate, but at least they're putting their foot out there and trying to get something done. But the idea is to create ongoing bill affordability. All of the programs that we really have in place with respect to electric, because for whatever reason, the electric utilities have resisted these programs and continue to resist these programs to today, with the exception of NIPSCO making this proposal in this case, of course. But everything is all about crisis funding, making funding available to folks who are in a financial crisis, facing disconnect. Things happen, car repairs, back to school fees, healthcare issues, other things, people fall behind on bills. And everything we have is tailored toward the idea of having money available to help customers in crisis. Well, CAC has a better idea and a better concept, and that's let's work to avoid that crisis in the first place and create bills that people can actually afford on a monthly basis and on a sustaining, ongoing basis moving forward. So that's why we like the idea of the Universal Service Program, providing those direct bill reductions on a monthly basis. Only provides it for 3 months out of the year. In this case, what they're proposing, we'd like to see that year round. But this is a good start, and we'll make suggestions about how to improve this program and get it done. But I guess also to your question, Kelly, we faced significant resistance from the electric utilities over the year on low income assistance program, and I wish I had a good answer for you as to why, because we came to agreements with all of the gas utilities in the mid-late 2000s on universal service programs, and all of the major gas utilities in the state have fairly robust and meaningful universal service programs that offer a tiered discount to their customers that give the biggest discount to those deeper in poverty than others and provides that monthly bill reduction. That would be the goal. We're now working with water and wastewater utilities across the state, and the idea of the same idea. We have some great programs in Indianapolis from Citizens Energy Group on the wastewater side of things. Indiana American has taken the lead on the investor-owned utility side of things, and have some pilot programs out there with respect to low-income assistance. And we've seen cities, most notably South Bend recently, who have passed low-income assistance program for water and wastewater customers, because citizens and those other utilities have recognized the affordability problem that their customers are having, and that we need to do something to help customers afford our services. So kudos to NIPSCO for getting this out there. And hopefully this is pointing in the right direction in terms of recognizing that folks staying connected to the system not only is the right thing to do from a societal lens, but it's also cheaper for everybody in the end. Costs a lot of money to send people late notices, cut people off, reconnect people, all of the losses associated with that. Let's keep people on the system, paying into the system on a monthly basis, an amount that they can afford. That's good for the utility, that's good for all customers, and that's better for society as a whole. So that's the goal here, is ongoing affordability, affordable bills on a monthly basis and an ongoing basis. And that's what we should be striving to achieve. So hope that answers your question you kicked there to me, Kelly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kerwin. And we did get a question. I'm going to open this up and let y'all fight over this. Okay, guys. April is asking, why does there seem to be no funding to help people improve the insulation in their homes? If homes were better insulated, their heating and cooling needs may decrease. And April is on point. Weatherization and efficiency is so incredibly important. Ben, would you like to take a stab at that? Or Kerwin, I see you're unmuting.
Yeah, no, I'll go ahead then, Ben. You can fill in any blanks I might leave. But there is funding for energy efficiency services. That's part of the NIPSCO demand side management programs that are approved separately outside of the base rate case rather. They have gas efficiency programs that provide rebates and audits and efficiency services for gas customers, and they have rebates available on the electric side as well. For those measures, they have income qualified programs for low income customers that complement the federal weatherization assistance program that's part of LIHEAP. But you're exactly right. The question is a good one. Everything starts with efficiency and reducing energy consumption on a monthly basis, especially when it comes to low and fixed income households who tend to live in poor quality housing stock, whether it's old single family houses that are poorly insulated with outdated appliances, or whether it's substandard affordable housing or substandard multifamily housing that's not as energy efficient as it could be. A big reason for the affordability crisis is just the fact we're using too much energy. People are living in inefficient homes that are not only wasting energy, but also potentially presenting health and safety hazards to those living in those premises. But good question. There is funding available already for NIPSCO customers, as well as low income and income qualified customers up in that service territory that folks can tap into through those programs. And that's something CAC takes very, very seriously and works very, very hard on. And go ahead, Ben. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I think you covered it really well. I think, I was going to just add that, we definitely participate, as Kerwin says, in these energy efficiency proceedings that are separate from this rate case and advocate very hard on behalf of making sure there's really robust energy efficiency programs that all our utilities offer. If the specific measure like insulation isn't offered for one utility today, it could be that the utility has shifted to other measures that its analysis found was maybe more impactful. So there's a lot that goes into those plans and in selecting which measures the utility is going to offer customers. But we definitely agree. We take those things very seriously and fight for really good programs for customers.
Wonderful. Thank you both. And we did just get a question in about inclining, declining rates, flattening residential rate structures. Is NIPSCO attempting to flatten rate structures based on consumption throughout this increase? Or are they proposing inverted rates in which customers pay more per kilowatt hour as they consume more?
No, they have a flat rate structure as it is, and they're
Okay.
proposing to continue that. So they don't have either inclining or declining block rates.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have unlike 3 other Indiana utilities, which do have declining block rates, and people across the country are stunned to hear that there's utilities in the year 2022 that have declining block rates. But fortunately, NIPSCO is not one of them. And let's not give them any ideas on that. So
I'd add here in Illinois, we have one large electric utility with declining block rates for winter only.
oh, that makes total sense, Samir. So yeah, glad we're not alone.
Solidarity. Let's see here. I think we've got one last question, and we are about at the hour mark. So will NIPSCO provide any matching funds for residential customers for programs available from the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act? Ben, I'm going to put you on the spot.
That is a great question. We would love for our utilities to participate in some of these new programs under the Federal Inflation Reduction Act that was just enacted in August this year. There's many different programs that are being rolled out with billions of dollars in funding available. And so this is a great opportunity for not only our utilities to take action and get some federal funds to help defer those costs, but there's a lot of tax credits in there that individuals can benefit from, not only for things like rooftop solar, but energy efficiency investments you make in your house. But a lot of those IRA programs are still being rolled out, if you will. There's still some time for the implementation phase where the federal government hasn't quite fully implemented it yet because this law is very new. So I think the short answer is that we don't know yet if or to the extent any of our utilities might be taking advantage of some of those programs. Would you add anything, Kerwin or Samir?
I see that Laura has asked a follow-up to that question about will CAC be proposing that NIPSCO match any funds. My instinct tells me that's probably a no on that. If they were shareholder funds, sure, CAC would have no problem and would support, of course, NIPSCO shareholders providing matching funds. But the problem is when you talk about will NIPSCO do this, will NIPSCO do that, that really means NIPSCO customers and NIPSCO ratepayers. And so while, you know, I suppose that's something we could look at and consider in the context of the cost and benefit outcome of providing ratepayer matching funds for taxpayer subsidies on the back end as well. But I think that would be a heavy lift in the state of Indiana to get our somewhat conservative sort of regulatory body and government to have ratepayers further subsidize subsidies coming from taxpayers, especially in the wake of sort of ongoing bill increases that we're seeing. And some of those subsidies in the IRA are incentives. Rather, I prefer to call them incentives. If you like them, you call them incentives. If you don't, you call them subsidies. Of course, I'm not afraid of the word subsidy. It doesn't bother this bigger government lefty, but that's okay. So I think the challenge becomes that where's the money coming from? You know, and ultimately, what's the impact to customers on that? And that would be something you'd have to look at through the lens of a cost-benefit analysis. If ratepayer money is better spent towards providing additional incentives on top of IRA taxpayer incentives, then absolutely that would be a good thing because those are investments going towards clean energy, which provide benefits to all. But are those incentives necessary to motivate that behavior? You provide incentives, you provide rebates, you provide tax credits to motivate and incent behavioral changes and motivate consumers to take action and make those investments. So that's another question that you would be asked to make that case before a regulatory body. Will the additional money provide any additional motivation for a customer to make that investment? And that's a question that would have to be answered through, again, taking a hard look at the numbers, looking at the cost benefit breakout and the ultimate cost to customers at the end. And is that the best place where public money is spent or other needs that would better serve the system as a whole? That would be that would be my response. Go ahead, Samir.
Sorry, Kerwin. I would add a couple things. Laura in the Q&A is alluding to new programs in the Inflation Reduction Act. Just to give an example of what Laura may be referring to, one thing the Inflation Reduction Act does is it extends the residential solar tax credit, which previously was going to expire after 2023, and it extends that by 11 years through 2034 at 30%. Basically, you get 30% of the cost of your new home solar system back from the IRS on your annual tax return for 11 more years, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. And there are other provisions for homeowners and regular folks in the bill. I think the residential solar piece is a big one. I would also say, Kerwin was alluding to a cost-benefit analysis of potentially using generally collected ratepayer funds to support individual solar installations like that, hypothetically. And if we were going to support that, we would want to probably provide technical analysis showing that distributed solar can support resiliency of the electrical system, potentially by reducing peak usage. It could reduce the need to install new large-scale power plants. So that would be the general story we might want to tell if we were going to argue for that type of policy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I think that wraps up our questions. If I have missed anyone, I will be sure to follow up after the fact. But I want to give a big thank you, of course, to everyone who joined us tonight. Unless Samir, Ben, or Kerwin, any final thoughts before we wrap up? No, we covered a lot of ground today. So thank you all for presenting. Thank you all for joining us. Again, we will share a recording of this webinar as well as the slides after the fact on our website. It will be sent in a follow-up email via Zoom. And if you can make it to Hammond on Monday the 12th, we'd love to see you at the field hearing. Next one's coming up on Wednesday, January 4th in Valparaiso. So thank you all so much for your time tonight and take good care.